Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today we are going to be making a dessert, but it's kind of an unconventional dessert. It is a sweet corn vanilla souffle with blackberries from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. It's kind of like a corn pudding, but she wants to make sure that you know that it's definitely supposed to be a dessert, not sort of a side, which is something we do in the South. We will serve a relatively sweet corn pudding with the main side dishes, but this is definitely a dessert. So there's several steps. It's gonna take a little while. And it's evening. So, because we want to make this pretty soon before we eat it. So, yeah, I think I have almost everything out. I'm gonna need to get some eggs, but I don't need those right now. So, the first thing we need to do is to make sort of a vanilla cream corn thing that will eventually be the base, I think, of the souffle. So we are starting with half of our heavy cream. So I've measured it all together, and I'm just gonna pour approximately half, as close as I can get. That seems good to me. And half of our fresh corn that has been cut off the cob. That's gonna be a lot easier to sort of estimate than the cream. There we go. So, the corn, the cream, we need some sugar. So this is just granulated white sugar, pre-measured, and some salt, just a little bit of salt, because salt sort of helps everything taste better. And then the other thing we need to do is we have a vanilla pod. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna do this on my countertop and on this, because it doesn't really, this is not a great knife. I don't care if I hurt it, and I probably won't hurt my countertop. So I'm gonna run the tip of the knife down the middle of this pod, and then kind of open it up and scrape. Let's see if I can get all of it open. Scrape the seeds out. And so I'm gonna do that also on here, because that's gonna make it easier. Got a good bit of them, but no, I cut it. Okay, there we go. I'm just gonna kind of get that in there, and we're gonna put the pod in too. So there we go. Get as many of those little vanilla seeds in there. And so what we're gonna do is we are going to put this on the stove, and we're going to simmer it for 5 minutes. So we're gonna bring it up to a simmer, and we're gonna let it simmer for 5 minutes, and then we're gonna take it off the stove. So we'll see you in about 5 minutes. So we let our corn and cream and sugar and salt and vanilla simmer for 5 minutes. Took a while to come up to a simmer, and then on my stove, about medium low, kind of kept it at a simmer. So we simmered that for 5 minutes, then we took it off and let it steep for 10 minutes. And now I have removed the vanilla bean, which she says to discard. I do sometimes wash them and then put them in sugar to make sort of vanilla sugar, which is good to have on hand. But now we're going to puree this until it is smooth. So I'm going to pour this into my blender. Get as much out of there as I can, but we are going to be using this pan again. So put it right there for now. All right, so I'm just going to blend it. What did she say? Just process. So I'm going to blend it until it is pretty smooth. Okay. That's pretty smooth. It is not 100% necessary to get this super smooth because we're going to be adding more corn into this later. So, you know, a few pieces aren't going to be a problem. But now we just set this aside. So I'm going to move this out of the way. So the next thing we have to do, we have to make a flour mixture that we're going to cook. So what I'm going to do right now is add my flour to this bowl and some baking powder. So that's a rising agent, so that I guess will help it rise in the oven. And I'm just going to use the whisk that I'm going to use later to mix this up. There we go. And then in the same saucepan, we're going to add the rest of the cream. So we used about half of it for that, and we're going to use half of it for this. And it doesn't matter if you get a little bit of, you know, the previous stuff in here because it's all going together in the end. So there we go. Now, I'm not going to show you this part, but we're going to heat this over medium heat until bubbles form around the edges. And then we're going to whisk in this flour mixture and cook it until it thickens up. It will be very pasty, she says. So we're gonna go do that and we'll show you what it looks like when that is all done. So I'm going to heat this on medium heat until the bubbles come around. Then I'm gonna add this and whisk and whisk and whisk until we think it's done. Okay, so it got very pasty very quickly. So as soon as there were bubbles around the edge, I put, no, this is very loud, sorry. I put the flour mixture in there, and now I'm gonna get the whisk out because the next part, she says just stir. So there we go. Now we've got some butter. I've got unsalted. She doesn't say specifically, but this is supposed to be at room temperature. Mine might be a little bit cooler, but it's been sitting out for a while. And we're going to stir this in 2 tablespoons at a time until it all gets incorporated. This is gonna hurt my hand. This is actually really close to room temperature. Probably because I'm on a granite countertop and I had colder butter. So I am going to get out my bowl for my stand mixer because we're gonna use that next. But we need to add this and some other things into here first. So, but I do need my eggs. So I'm going to save my yolks in here and put my whites in here. That's the goal. Fingers crossed. There we go. That's one. This one happened much nicer. There we go. There we go. Yolk broke. That's not a big deal. So I'm going to set this aside and give my hands a rinse. Now we're going to combine our pureed corn mixture, which is as smooth as my blender can make it, but that's all right. Not super smooth, but that's okay. So we're combining this, So now I need some lemon zest. Had a bit of an interruption. So I have the lemon zest in here, and now I'm gonna put my egg yolks in here, mix that up. There we go. And the rest of this corn. There we go. Good enough. We're going to mix this all up. And this is ready. I'm going to clean up a little bit, take some stuff away that I no longer need, and get my mixer. Before I whisk my egg whites, just so that I am completely ready for it when the time comes, I'm going to prepare my pan. So she says to use, oh gosh, a 6x6 casserole dish, or you can use several small ramekins. I think she says 6. I don't have 6 ramekins anymore. Or you could use a 10-inch cast iron skillet. I'm gonna use this, which is about a 6-inch casserole dish, but it is round and it's taller, so I'm not sure that it will rise above it. She says it should rise just over the lip, but to prepare it, I am in something, it's something that is completely not like me. I bought baking spray with flour because she says to use it for this. And I know that just putting baking spray on here would not be good for a souffle because it needs something to sort of attach. It doesn't want the sides to be slippery, so that's why the flour. So instead of greasing and flouring it myself, I decided to do what she says and buy this baking spray. So I'm going to, I think she says, use copious amounts of this. And I'm gonna try to turn it away from my egg whites so it doesn't get in there. All right, that's copious. So that's ready. And so now we have just our egg whites, and we're going to beat them until they reach stiff peaks. She doesn't say what speed, so. Close. I think I might be at stiff peaks. It's pretty thick. So I transferred my corn mixture into this bowl because the next thing I have to do is to fold the egg whites into the corn mixture very gently. And I couldn't see being able to do that very easily in that tiny little pan. So even though she didn't tell me to, I made the call to do that. So I'm dirtying yet another pan. All right, so now I'm just going to fold them as gently as I can, trying not to get all of the air out of them, trying to lighten the corn mixture. I think we've gotten most of the big balls of egg white in there, and now I'm going to put it in my pan, and I'm going to put this into my 350-degree oven. She says this will take approximately 35 minutes. There are no other indications of how to know when this is done. So I'm gonna have to kind of guess, I think, especially since my vessel is slightly different than what she says. So I'm gonna put this on a baking tray just in case I underestimated the amount that this is going to rise and maybe overflows. I am supposed to sprinkle this with nutmeg. So I'm just going to it was a pretty decent amount of nutmeg. I'm not gonna measure, but I'm going to sprinkle it until it looks like there's nutmeg on there. Good enough. Back into the oven it goes, 35 minutes. All right. So this has been baking a little more than 35 minutes, and it was very, very wobbly, and I wasn't sure that it was done. So we're gonna take its temperature. I looked it up on the internet. Somewhere between 150 and 160 should be fine. It looks like we are maybe not quite there. It's looking like eggy. All right, we're gonna put it in for a couple more minutes. It is deeper and less wide, so it should take a little bit longer. So I believe this should be done now. I'm just gonna stick this in here. We're definitely done. Still, so I read something that said it shouldn't come out with egg on it, but this one does. I don't care. I'm gonna go by the temperature. We're gonna call this done. So, already burned myself once today. It did not come out of the dish. That's great. It did rise. I think it looks good. So I think it looks great. We're gonna take some pictures. This will fall. That's kind of to be expected. It won't be as poofy. She says to serve it as quickly as you can. If you can't serve it immediately, it won't be as poofy, but it will be just as tasty. So we're gonna try to serve this really quickly. So we'll show you what it looks like when we get it all served up. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make sweet corn vanilla souffle with blackberries from Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. And I'm pretty sure I've eaten souffle before, but not very often. And I'm pretty sure I've never made it before. So I was a little concerned about making sure it was done. So I did end up taking the temperature. Mine ended up a little runny in the middle, which I think is okay for souffle. It definitely was up to temperature, so nothing was going to be harmful for us. The eggs were cooked enough, so that shouldn't be a problem. But it was pretty runny in the middle, so if you don't like that, you might want to, cook it longer. I think there's a lot of guessing game with how long to cook it, because larger dishes, how deep it is, how wide it is, and there's also the smaller, you can do them in individual portions in small ramekins. All of that's going to take different amount of time. So that's just something you're going to have to figure out when it's done yourself. I will say ours, temperature wise, was about 155 at the lowest, although it was higher than that elsewhere. And it was still running in the middle. So I'm not the best person to tell you how to do this, but if you would be put off by having a runny center, you might want to be a little bit more, or cook it a little bit longer. Even the outside where it was, fully cooked was really moist, really tender, and the whole thing was delicious. It was not too sweet, so it was definitely not a super sweet corn dessert, but it was sweet. It tasted very much like corn, a little hint of the lemon, and the blackberries went really well with it. In fact, whole family liked it. The one that I was afraid wouldn't like it the most, gave it a thumbs up, thought it was best with the blackberries. She doesn't even like to eat blackberries in general. Usually she won't eat them. So, well, she will if I make her, but she will not willingly eat them. But she likes this with the blackberries. So they were a great accompaniment. And it was great that you didn't have to do much to them. You just had to, rinse them off and slice them up. So I think this is not a bad first attempt at a souffle, not a bad thing to try. So we might make another one sometime. We'll see. I'm sure my kids would eat this one again. Maybe next summer. We're getting to the end of corn season here, and this is definitely something I think you would want fresh corn in, not any like frozen corn. Although if you froze it yourself, it might be okay. Anyway, it was a little difficult. There were several steps and lots of machinery, but not too bad. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and come back and watch me make something else next week.